John's reading. All right.
I'd like to welcome you to the Cedar Rapids Community School Board meeting. Today is Monday, November the 18th, 2019. Could I have someone read the motion to approve our agenda?
Sure, I move that the agenda of Monday, November 18th, 2019 Board of Education Annual Meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
I second.
Roll call.
Director Borcherding. Aye. Director Jansen.
Aye.
Director Jacobo. Aye. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Laverty.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. First on our agenda is to approve the minutes of our October the 28th and November the 11th meeting. Are there any questions about the agenda items? Any questions at all? This will require a vote. So all in favor of approving the minutes as approved, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Next, I'll turn the meeting over to Laurel Day for the abstract of the school election.
Thank you. This evening, you have the abstract of election and tabulation of ballots by precinct, as well as the Public Measure E revenue purpose statement for the Cedar Rapids Community School, both which have been approved by the Lynn County Supervisors. The board is asked to declare that the following individuals have been elected to a 4-year term: David Tominski, Director, District 1, Dexter Merschbrock, Director, District 4, and Cindy Garlock and Jennifer Newman, Directors at Large. This item does require a motion. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And this is a roll call. Director Jansen.
Aye.
Director Jacobo.
Aye.
Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Laverty.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. It's going to be quick. This is our final meeting for the 4 board members. Director Raphael Jacobo, Director Kristen Jansen, Director John Laverty, and Vice President Mary Meisterling. Are any of you interested in making any brief statements?
I would just like to make a few comments. First of all, I did speak with Vice President Meisterling prior to this meeting, and she sends her sincere regrets for not being here, but wanted everybody to know that some of the comments I make speak for her as well. Mary served on this board for 17 years, a long and distinguished service to our community and our district. I've served for 12 years, and Kristen and Raphael each have served for 4 years. And during those 17 years or 12 years or 4 years, however you want to look at it, we've seen so many changes in our district, in our community, and with our schools. We've gone from no child left behind to every student succeeds. We've gone a year after I started from having one of the worst natural disasters in our country with the floods of 2008 and all of the community discussions and pulling together that created the recovery, working with FEMA and the amazing administrators and staff here in our district. We've seen steady progress in many areas of student achievement, and we still see struggles with mental health, with some of our populations and our families, and so many opportunities for continued growth within those students and families in our district. We've seen unprecedented underfunding of public education at all levels, including K-12. And as new board members, I hope that you continue the efforts that we've tried to work with our legislators at the state and federal levels to understand the importance of what this district and other public districts do every day to support all children. We've seen changes to collective bargaining. We've seen technology changes. We've worked hard to make sure that we've had equitable distribution of those technologies across families in our district. We've worked hard to make sure that every learner is future ready.
Yes.
We are CRCSD. And how proud all of us, I think, that have been on the board are coming together as a community, really, to focus on those efforts. The kids really are first in our minds. We've listened to the community, those of us sitting up in front of you today, literally for hundreds of hours, if we added it together, for a number of years, thinking about facilities and listening to our facilities master plan committee, and listening to those who agreed and who did not agree with everything that we were talking about. Everyone on this current board supported the facilities master plan as presented in the final iteration, knowing that there were pauses included in that plan. And those pauses were intentional, knowing that what we decided a few years ago or last year would not be the same state of our district and our community in 15 or 20 years. But we need to move forward, and I hope that the incoming board members continue to think about that these are opportunities, that this is not a static place, and it never will be. I want to personally thank Noreen Bush. You're amazing. After having gone through 3 superintendents and multiple searches and listening to literally many, many, many other districts who have gone through this process, we are blessed in this district, whether you've agreed with all of the superintendent's decisions over the last 12 or 17 years or whatever it is. These are not easy jobs, and the priorities are immense, and the weight on that superintendent, I can tell you, is pretty great. And we are all very lucky in this community to have Noreen Bush, and speaking on behalf of me, and I believe those of us that are leaving this board, I sincerely hope that you consider Noreen Bush for the next permanent superintendent of this district. I want to thank David Nicholson. We can never, as a board member, understand all of the school financing in Iowa, let alone the feds. And, after doing this for 12 years, I learned something new every time, and the laws change. And staying in budget is one of the primary things that a board does, and advocating for adequate funding. And you will have many new board members, many people coming at you, many different constituents and groups coming at you from all directions that want to spend more money in lots of ways that we may not have, and prioritizing that may not always be easy, but you have great people here in David and Noreen and others that will help guide you through some of those tough times. And most of all, I know that we want to thank Laurel Day. Laurel Day, as the board secretary, is our guiding light as a board. I will just tell you, as new board members, trust in Laurel. She has your back. She has the district's back, and she will make sure that you don't step into waters and into mud that you don't want to step into or shouldn't step into. So trust Laurel, and I know that takes a little bit of time more for some than others, but she has your back, and thank you so much, Laurel, for all you've done for all of us. And to my fellow board members, Kristen and Raphael and Mary, who couldn't be here tonight, it's been a pleasure serving with you and the many others that have come before all of us that we've had a chance to work with. The diversity of thought and the diversity of experiences and the diversity of being able to listen to multiple viewpoints from our community is so critical to being a board member. And again, I think I would like to encourage all of the new board members just to keep as much of an open mind and embrace that diversity of thought and be respectful of each other. I don't think we have discussions behind closed doors on a regular basis, in closed meetings or in public settings. We'll have them, and we may not always agree, but we always respect each other, and I think that that's been a hallmark in all the years that I've been on this board. So moving forward, I just want to wish, on behalf of all of us that are leaving the board at this time, the very best to you, David, and to Dexter, and to Jen, and to Cindy. And Godspeed to all of you, and do whatever's best for our kids. Thanks.
I would like to make a comment on behalf of the board and to thank each one of you for the time that you've spent on this board, for all the hard work, for the many accomplishments we made as a board. You will be truly missed. And I can say that our focus has been on our students. We want to make sure that our students are successful. We look at our community, our parents, and I say to each and every one of you, job well done. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of this district like we are. And we hope that we see you around and maybe even come to a board meeting now and then. But thank you so much for everything that you have done for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. I appreciate it greatly, and the board as well. Thank you. Well,
Can I just say something really quick, Nancy? Even though John took up all the minutes, so we're gonna go past like. Yeah, we're over now, so I'll try to keep it down to 30 seconds or so. No, first of all, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to serve our entire community, all of Cedar Rapids. I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. Whether it was criticism or consensus, it challenged me to be better. And I think as a board, we were all challenged, which in turn meant challenging your administration, which meant challenging you. And I'm excited and optimistic, even leaving this seat and knowing the direction that we're going. There's a lot of good things happening, a lot of good work being done, and there's gonna be a lot of us keeping an eye on that work. So what we do today can, be done better tomorrow, right? We know where we came from, we know where we wanna go. Keep going in that direction. Thanks for the opportunity to work with a lot of you and to speak with a lot of you, and up here at the board table, the same. And as Nancy pointed out, we'll all still be around and, happy to assist in any other way I'm sure that we can.
okay, our annual meeting is now adjourned. Our organizational and regular meeting will be called to order shortly. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.
John, thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll see you around. Thank you. Thank you.
Another one? I'll take another one.
All right, the time is 5:45. The organizational and regular Board of Education meeting for the Cedar Rapids Community School District on November 18th, 2019 is now called to order. At this time, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Approve the agenda of Monday, November 18th, 2019, Board of Education organizational and regular meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call. Everybody ready? Director Garlock. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Merschbrock. Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Dominski.
Thank you. All I can think of is, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, David. I practiced this over and over again. I'm sorry. Director Tominski. Director Humbles.
Aye.
I'm so sorry, David. All right, at this time, if the directors-elect would please come to the back of the dais here for their oath of office and certificates of election.
Want to move
Nope,
over?
you're good. I want to
Okay.
just have a seat standing right up in here. All right, if you'll please raise your right hand. Do you, Cindy Garlock, Dexter Merschbrock, Jennifer Newman, and David Tominski solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Director of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, "I will." Congratulations. Congratulations. You guys are even standing in the right order. Congratulations. All right. Congratulations to Dexter and David and Jen and Cindy. The next item on our agenda this evening is the election of a presiding officer for the Board of Education. At this time, I will open up nominations for the position of President of the Board of Directors.
I nominate Nancy Humbles as president for the Board of Directors, Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education.
Are there any other nominations? If not, I then would declare these nominations closed, and at this time I will ask you to vote by roll call. This would be for Nancy Humbles to be the presiding officer for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Director Tominski.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Northbrock. Director Newman. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Humbles.
Aye.
Congratulations. If you would please come forward. Yep. Do you, Nancy Humbles, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of President of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, I do.
I do. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
You ready for me to go on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
We will now vote for vice president in the same manner. And at this time, I would open up the nominations for the office of vice president of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education.
I nominate Jennifer Borcherding.
Are there any other nominations? If not, then I officially declare the nominations closed. And at this time, I will ask you to vote by roll call. Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Brock. Director Newman. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Garlock. Director Tominski. And President Humbles.
Aye.
Congratulations, Jennifer. You have been elected as the board vice president. If you would please come forward for the oath of office. Jennifer Borcherding, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Iowa, that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of office of vice president of the Board of Directors of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law. If so, please respond by saying, I do.
I do.
Congratulations. Thank you. The last item under board governance tonight is the conflict of interest statements. This statement was submitted to all of you electronically. At this point, I can say that I officially have received all of them. They have been signed by President Humbles and will be on record and file. At this point, then we can turn it over to the superintendent's report and board of directors reports. Superintendent Bush.
Thank you very much, Laurel Day. And away we go. Here we are in our first meeting together. So again, I would like to sincerely thank our former directors who have rolled off their service tonight. Collectively, 37 years they dedicated to our district. Wow. And that is a tremendous effort among those team members who I know will continue to support us as community members, and new directors. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the table. Away we go. Let the fun begin. All right. So I would like to talk about today, actually. Today we had a visitor at Taft Middle School. Carson King came to Taft Middle School to talk about his journey to raise $3 million for the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital. And alongside the message, he talked about how one person can make a big difference, maybe not even realizing where the journey started, but where the journey ended. And that also delivered some messages about the powers of social media, both the good and the bad of social media experiences to impact our students, and the messages that they can use in a positive way in the current lives that they live, and that one person truly can make a big difference. In addition to that, I'm very excited to share that last week we had 4 additional schools go through the Marzano High Reliability Schools Certification. Level 1 certification certifies safe, supportive, and collaborative environments. And those who participated last week included Taft Middle School, Nixon, Harrison, and Pierce Elementaries. So that now gets us to a total of 13 schools that are certified with Level 1 certification through the High Reliability Schools framework. I am sure that this journey will continue. We anticipate more schools going through that certification this spring, and this has truly become not just a celebration of all the hard work that each one of these individual teams do and schools do, but also a celebration for our district of common language and what we truly believe for all kids at the foundation of safe, supportive, and collaborative environments. So congratulations to Taft, Pierce, Harrison, and Nixon. And finally, on December 6th, we have our State of the District opportunity, and this is welcoming members of our community to really give remarks about the current state of our district. So we look forward to that morning. It's a light breakfast and then a series of events to make sure that our community knows and can celebrate with us the great heavy lifts we're doing around our strategic plan. And we'll also have a little entertainment that morning, little music interlude. And so hope you'll be able to join us that morning. So without any further ado, I will hand it over to President Humbles.
Thank you. Are there any board reports?
I have a couple of things. One, I had an opportunity to visit some social study classes at Roosevelt this morning, and they are doing as part of one of the projects that they're involved with this year. I think they started it last year actually too, is they are divided into groups, into teams, and the teams are writing legislative proposals. And they will make a formal presentation to some judges, I believe, from this building, the LSC, and a couple will be chosen, and they will actually have the opportunity to go to Des Moines and present them to the legislators sometime in January. We have just some outstanding students in this district, and they're doing some outstanding work under some great guidance. But some of the topics I just want to hit on, and here's the insight. There was some legislative proposals about mental health, here was one about having more vegetarian opportunities in the school cafeteria, about facilities and improvement of facilities, security within the building and within their own community. So some great ideas, and some of them not only have problems, but they have some very detailed solutions to it. So I was called as an expert to come and provide some work, my work, lobbying legislators and so on. And so it was just a great morning, and I'm sure that some of this work also likewise is going on in other buildings, but I just wanted to share that. The other is, as a member of the IASB exec board, slip of the tongue there, I want to present our new board members with you not only become a member of the Cedar Rapids Community Schools, but you are also a member of the Iowa State School Board Association. So, and looking forward to seeing, I hope, many of you, if not most of you, at the Fall Convention coming up later this week. And we'll see you in Des Moines, and if you have any questions, I'll be around down there, or if I can help in any way, surely let me know. So, thank you.
Any other reports?
I have a few items. One also ties to convention. So for the IASB, Iowa State School Board Association, Iowa Association of School Boards, sorry. I'm actually our voting delegate. So for our delegate assembly, that's where we set our legislative priorities, we develop our legislative beliefs, we look at our legislative resolutions. So I just want the board to know that I will make a motion from the floor under a section under beliefs that is dealing with employee relations and collective bargaining, to add an inclusion of promoting safe, healthy, effective, and respectful work environments for all. There are a lot of items under this subsection that deal with student outcome and student achievement, which is obviously wonderful and should be a focus, but I really feel that we need to have words in there that are intentionally addressing staff. So I will be making that motion. The other is under the resolution section. Under the section of teacher recruitment and licensure, I will be asking for the following to be removed: pathways for individuals with non-traditional educational backgrounds to meet licensure qualifications. Feel it undervalues teaching as a profession. It doesn't respect what our teachers are out there doing every day, day in and day out, that they've made a career of, that they have a degree in. So I will be making a motion from the floor for that to be removed from that section. So that is legislative stuff. And then now for something fun, on Friday, the Cedar Rapids Community Schools Foundation had their annual fundraiser, the Lip Sync for Learning. This year it was at the Vets Coliseum, which is different from where it's been in the past. It's a fun event where local people volunteer to have lip sync battles with each other. The foundation's goal was $15,000 this year, and they met their goal with that event, which is fantastic. McGrath Motorsports were the winners of the event this year. Just a little bit about Foundation. They do a lot to kind of bridge the gap between funding for extracurricular and co-curricular activities for students. They do also some funding for professional development and supply some additional monies for classroom needs. So it was a fun event by all, but there's room for more to attend next year. So keep an eye out for the invitation that'll be coming out for 2020.
So Cedar River Academy was the second place, and they
were
brought
great.
it, like, big time, they brought it.
They were great.
Who won the People's Choice? And
Van Meter?
Oh my gosh.
I think it was Van Meter.
Yeah. That were also very good with some Britney Spears.
If I remember right, one year we did have an entry from the school board that was rated number one, I believe.
School board won.
took it all.
That's right. First year.
So new members, just throwing that out. You never know what you're asked to do.
Right.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move to communications, delegations, and petitions. I'd like to remind those that request to address the board to please step up to the podium when your name is called. Please state your name and address for record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes for your remarks. And Board Secretary Day will serve as your timer. We do have one, Mr. Lawrence Winklowski.
Lawrence Winklowski, 4234 Morel Road, Northeast. For new board members who may not know me, I've been coming to these meetings over 13 years. I ran for school board once, and thank God I lost. And I've also been on the SIAC committee, and I was on a facility master plan. First question I have for you is what do elections and public input sessions have in common? The answer is no one participates in either, or very few people, and everyone complains when it's all done. I remember back when we were closing Polk School, I did not feel that that was a very transparent process. However, I felt insulted over the last few weeks as people complained with the lack of transparency with the facilities master plan. I attended all the meetings. I went to some public input sessions where there was more committee members than there were people from the public. And I just think the comments that were made about the lack of transparency and this was predetermined and all that are just statements of total ignorance. And that people made no attempt to find out the facts about what's happened. Sure, there was a person who didn't like the way it was going, and I'm sure some of the people dropped out because the community wasn't involved. It's like, why should we put all this time in if the people from the community are not going to be there to provide us the input? This committee did the best they could with all the constraints, based on the constraints it had. There are two potential improvements that could be made. Number one, it was outside the constraints of the committee to determine if, should we consider a land swap? Maybe take two schools where we're going to put one, and maybe there's a park in between that the city owns. Maybe we should swap the park with the school, and build it there because it's a better location, or some other private piece of land, or even potentially like over by Kennedy High School, start buying some of the houses next to Pierce Park, because Pierce Park would be another great addition to both Kennedy and Pierce. And then the other thing was this committee that it's now, I guess, this facility, I think it is basically called the Facility Master Plan Committee, or Facility Master Plan Oversight Committee. They should not be handling the new schools. That should be handled by a totally different committee. They should be taking care of what they've been taking care of, which is the facilities. And that, but the new schools, that I think needs more attention. And that. Some meeting changes I'd like to see. At the beginning of the meeting, to bring everyone together so we start the meeting on the same page, I think we should be saying a Pledge of Allegiance. Every meeting, one or two board members should give us a small report of things that how they've interfaced with the community. And that, not just that, well, I went to Des Moines and that, or had it with this committee, but, something that actually had. Only a couple sentences, but it'd be nice to get some feedback. Some of you ran on transparency. It's a great way of being transparent. The format for public hearings, it should follow the procedures that is used by the city. Someone should present the facts, the public should comment on it, and then it should be voted on right away while it's fresh in everyone's mind. Not the people go ahead and make their statements and then stick it in the consent agenda. That makes no sense. And it also the way it's by having it doing it the way the city does, I think it's a more transparent way to find out what's going on. Sure, it may not apply to parking lots and roofs, but there's other things it should apply to. I'd like to see the school board improve its use of Robert's Rules of Order when it comes to the consent agenda, don't have discussions in the consent agenda. Pull the things out properly, close consent agenda, then talk about the item. And that, if there's, I just lost my page. It's acceptable to have opposing opinions and votes.
Excuse me, Mr. Winkowski, your time is up.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Minkowski. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like pulled for comment, question, or a separate vote?
I would like to comment on the policy manual review and revision. Specifically, I had a question about the changes to exempt meetings. And
So, what, Dexter, what is it, BA, what is the, so I can,
20011 05121.
okay.
I'm wondering about the striking of the language. The teacher's contract termination meeting hearing will be recorded verbatim by a court reporter, and the words verbatim by a court reporter are being struck from that.
Yes, so that used to be a requirement by law. It is no longer a requirement to have it verbatim. So that's why legal counsel told us that it was no longer required, so we would need to strike that.
Do we have to strike it, or?
It will still
is it
be
just-
recorded.
So my question then is, so recorded how?
By either by tape recording, digital recording, or through a court reporter.
Okay, so, but we're not definitely doing it by a court reporter because we're striking that language.
It can be a court reporter, but it most likely would probably not be a court reporter. If we can put it back in, our legal counsel advised us to take it out.
My only concern would be if you take it out and you have a recording, just by video or however, if there's a case where it then needs to have an accurate recording of that hearing, what happens if something happens to the recording, it's inaudible, and then we can't get an accurate transcript of that? Because that was the only place I saw this language in the, types of meetings. And there was other places where, we struck out the word tape and put in recording, or just left the word recording in there. And so that makes sense to me. But this specific language of verbatim by a court reporter seems like it would be the best thing to do if in that specific hearing, if that specific hearing had that language in the first place. And that's just the,
Yeah, it's not saying that it won't be recorded. It just gives you more broad scope about how you can record it, how it will be recorded.
so could we then say will be recorded by video and by a court reporter, or is that, I'm just wondering if there will be a situation where, if there's a legal situation where it needs to be verbatim and then we can't have a verbatim, would the district then have a problem not being able to produce an accurate, because the recording we have is insufficient to get an accurate transcription of that specific meeting?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to get back to you on this, since I didn't know this ahead of time.
Yeah.
I'll have to consult with legal counsel, and then I'll get back to you.
Laurel, could I comment?
Sure.
I think one of the reasons why it was removed was the fact that, on a couple of things. One, the added expense for a court reporter, that would be the burden that would be placed on the district, and being able to find someone, too, the availability of, it's a very selective process. And the other is that all of our closed meetings and our exempt meetings are also recorded, but they're recorded electronically, they're recorded digitally, they're not recorded. And I would say there's always a possibility too that a transcript copy could be lost, or something could happen to that too. So.
Court reporter, it's making it more broad spectrum about how you can record.
Right.
Yes.
Any other questions? The consent agenda requires a roll call, and a roll call vote due to the personnel report. So how should we handle the question?
I'm not sure. Are you asking us to pull it out of the consent agenda? Are you willing to approve it tonight, knowing that we'll get back to you? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, before we move on, I'm wondering if any of the other new board members, like this review and revision is a 5-year process that we have to do, right? Is it something that has to be approved tonight? Is there a potential to approve these revisions at the next board meeting, given that we are all just being sworn in here this evening.
Yeah, what I would say is you're not approving regulations and procedures, you're only approving policies. So what you're looking at is a regulation which doesn't require your approval. We bring that to you for your feedback and input, and then we take it from there. So policies do come back for a second read, regulations and procedures do not.
So is everything on here, or I was just looking at one regulation? Are these all regulations? Some are regulations, some are policies, is what it looks like.
That's correct. You have policies, regulations, and procedures that are included as part of that agenda item.
I would just say if any of the other new board members would feel more comfortable voting on the changes, you know, if we want to say that we've reviewed the ones that aren't being changed tonight.
That's what you're doing. You're actually going to come back at December 9th board meeting to final consider and approval of the policies. That's exactly what you're going to be doing.
So what we're doing is moving forward, and then it will come back before
Okay.
us again in December,
Cool.
okay? So this requires a roll call due to the personnel report.
I guess I'm still not clear. Are we leaving this in the agenda?
Are we leaving it in?
The agenda.
No, if we're going to vote on these things again, and this 5-year process is just a kind of a legal matter, right? We can make a motion or an agenda item to change a policy at any time, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is just part of the 5-year process.
That's
We're going to
correct.
take the vote now, take the vote in
Right.
December, and if we have a problem with something else or any policy, that can be
Yes,
addressed
and
at
it
any
will
other
come
time.
before us again in December,
Okay,
okay?
then proceed.
Roll call, please.
Director Tominski?
Aye.
Director Borcherding?
Aye.
Director Merschbrock? Director Newman?
Aye.
Director Anhalt?
Aye.
Director Garlock?
Aye.
President Humbles?
Aye. Thank you. Next, we'll move to learning and leadership. Akwi will be turning the presentation over to you about our communications plan.
Thank you, President Humbles. And the version of the presentation that you'll see tonight is maybe a smidge different than what was submitted last week, but just a smidge different. So I appreciate the opportunity to share an update with you about communications. I was hired in 2017 as communications director, and that was the same year, that was the first year of the strategic plan in its iteration at that time. And the charge for story, which is the way it was defined in the strategic plan, was to reclaim and advance our story. And when I came on board, there were 4 primary ways that we were intending to do that: telling positive stories, communicating about our vision and mission, which was also new at the time, and then strengthening relationships with media, as well as informing and engaging staff. So we have the what, advance our story, and then the how, these 4 bullet points, and the why essentially boils down to staff engagement, staff morale, making sure that we're informing and educating the public and the staff, creating that sense of transparency in process as well as in how we're producing stories and how we're delivering those stories to the public and to families and to staff. And then also, hopefully, as we go through the process, then positively impacting enrollment, because the more you're able to tell the positive stories about the work that's underway, not that the work hadn't been underway prior to this, but it wasn't being shared with the public and with staff and with families. So being intentional about sharing the positive work underway and really engaging as a leadership team together to be strategic about how we're telling those stories and how we're communicating with staff and families, hopefully is something that will impact us positively over time as well. So I sat down with my team, and that team consists of Justin Schaefer, who you see behind there. He's waving at you, TV media specialist, and then Mark Beneshik, who's also a TV media specialist here. You'll see him with his camera from time to time. And then Pat Zamanek is our administrative assistant, and she also works with Adam Zimmerman. So Adam and I have the privilege and opportunity and are humbled to be kept on track by Pat every day. And then Pat also supports the work that I do as director for the volunteer program for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Each of our 31 schools has a volunteer or an enrichment coordinator, and that person in each of our schools helps to support the volunteer efforts and initiatives underway at each of those schools. So between Pat and me, then we also oversee the volunteer program. And so working with Pat, Justin, and Mark, we were very intentional in year one about establishing that our number one focus is, through communication, is to engage, inform, and inspire trust, not only in public education in general, but certainly specifically in our school district. So we're constantly trying to make sure that everything we communicate out goes back to those three themes. And then our communication focus, very intentional about utilizing traditional, digital, and live media to engage and inform stakeholders and inspire that trust. So my first year was really a matter of assessing current state. What was going well, what needed to be stabilized, what was going well enough to start optimizing, and then what could be eliminated. And one of the things that I focused on was taking a closer look at that digital media. So we were doing things very well when it came to how we were engaging traditional media, but there was a lot of room for opportunity in terms of how we were engaging digital media. And we know that when it comes to social media, about 68% of adults utilize Facebook specifically to engage with information. On the other hand, about 1 out of 4 school districts don't have any social media platforms at all. So you've got 68% of adults engaging with social media to gain access to information, specifically Facebook. And then 1 out of 4 school districts don't use any social media at all. So there's this disparity between how people gain information and how school districts are using social media. And so taking a closer look at the platforms that existed in year one, Facebook existed and we were using it, but not as intentionally as we could have been. And then Instagram was not a platform that we used at all, and then Twitter was underutilized. And so those 3 primary social media platforms we took a really close look at and said, how can we most quickly and effectively and strategically engage our staff, our community, and our families with our story, those things that we're doing well and the things that we'd like people to know more about. And so the way we did that, focusing on telling positive stories, was through a specific campaign called communications campaign called Our Stories CRCSD. And it was intentionally designed to tell the stories of each of our schools, each of our 31 schools over the course of the year, 1 school a week, through photo vignettes, videos, really amplifying the staff and the students at each of those schools and the programs as well. And so we put together a couple of different communication campaigns that year. The first was Power of We, which was designed to engage staff. And then, of course, the second was Our Stories, designed to amplify the stories of our school district to our community. And one little bit of information, so when you're trying to engage people with your messaging, the 2 key words to use are we and our. And so it was intentional even in that regard that we use those 2 words in each of those 2 campaigns. Additionally, that first year, we took a closer look at exactly how we were telling those stories through photography and videography. I know some of this is going to feel sort of like a little bit simple and granular, but overall we're building a foundation for what we would then build upon over the next 2 to 5 years. So this is an example of the photography that we were primarily used to taking over the course of the years prior to me, and students very deeply engaged in reading, sitting at a desk, and we certainly want students to be studious, but at the same time, looking at that, I thought I want to see kids who are happy, excited. What does that whole child experience look like at our schools from the beginning of the day to the end of the day and everything in between? So also taking an opportunity to use visual story to amplify diversity as well. So creating a sense of enthusiasm through the eyes of our students was something that was important for us to consider doing over the course of that first year, and essentially saturating our digital media in ways that would communicate that. So you've got basically 4 bits of information here that we have become intentional about communicating when it comes to our district, our students, and our staff. And then we took a closer look at not only telling positive stories with Our Stories CRCSD in year 2, but then also how are we communicating our vision and mission. So that second year is when we launched the branded district visioning poster that celebrated our vision, our mission, our beliefs, and the profile of a graduate. And then the graphic elements in that poster were extended to other print and digital communications. And then strengthening the relationship that we have with the media was also something that we focused on last year. And the work that was happening behind the scenes in that regard you can now see in something like McKinley Matters, so that monthly story series that the Gazette's Molly Duffy and Rebecca Miller each produce with the support of Adam Zimmerman and Justin and Jason over there at McKinley as well. And then finally, informing and engaging staff. So again, thinking back to the digital, traditional, and live media concepts. So last year, we thought, all right, how can we get creative and intentional about utilizing live media opportunities? So live events, and we launched a series called Schooled, which was designed to be TED Talk type events, which fell flat. And I'll come back to that in a moment. We also launched community coffees, which were designed to engage the community in the mornings, which fell flatter. And so we discontinued the community coffees. It didn't do quite what it was intended to do, but we took a closer look at Schooled, those live events, and made some adjustments. And so this year we launched Schooled as a podcast. And I'm really excited about the work that we're doing with Schooled as a podcast to engage people, listeners all over the world, really, if they wanted to find us with what we're doing here in Cedar Rapids. And then we also used a billboard series over the course of last year to amplify our messaging around diversity, all of those really incredible things that we offer here in Cedar Rapids that none of our, all the wonderful things we offer here in Cedar Rapids. So this year we're looking at, again, stabilization, optimization, and expansion. So when I look at year 3, I think back to all of those things that we were doing that were brand new and fresh over years 1 and 2 under the strategic plan, and at the same time we were remaining a team player. So taking a closer look at how we were supporting human resources and the communications that human resources pushes out to our entire staff, how we support our building leaders in urgent and crisis communications. Something comes up in the middle of the day that requires my attention, I drop everything else and attend to that. How we're supporting digital literacy, how we're supporting facilities master plan in the superintendent's office and all the initiatives and actions underway through the superintendent's office, profile of a graduate, and so on. So really focusing on how we're becoming more strategically aligned with the other administrators on the district leadership team. And that becomes somewhat overwhelming, to be honest with you, because we're all, as you've imagined, as you've discovered, and as you've learned, we're all doing really important work, and it's big rocks that we're trying to push, and a lot of it is new. And so with all of those new things underway, a lot of communications is required that hadn't necessarily been required in the past. And so trying to make sure that as a communications team, we're doing the work that we need to be doing to communicate, as well as supporting our team leaders is constantly on our minds. So as Noreen Bush has shared with the board previously, this is something that I believe that was communicated with you probably in orientation as well. This is our current iteration of the strategic plan. You will notice that there are 4 focus areas here. In the first iteration of the strategic plan, story was one of 5. And so now we look at this and understand that story is truly integrated into all of the work and is not necessarily a standalone. And so as we look ahead to the rest of this school year, we're really focusing on building internal capacity. So one of the things that we have started working on with our buildings is building social media capacity at the building level. So all of our 31 schools have their own Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram platforms. And then the next step would be to support, coach, and engage 3 staff members at each school to be social media administrators / experts and be empowered to tell the stories of their schools on their own through those social media platforms. Crisis and urgent communication templates is another item that we're sort of working on behind the scenes in order to be able to provide our building leaders with templates that they can utilize.
I want everyone to know we're going to get started here at 6:30 with a panel discussion. The tables in the back.
I thought for sure I was being cut off like it was the Grammys or something. I'm like, I am going to take all the time I want. Like, you don't get to start the music on me. No, that's not. I'm kidding.
discussion here shortly.
Um,
What you notice on your table,
is that though?
3x5 index cards out
Justin's
there.
trying to figure it out.
If
Okay.
you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't cut me off, Justin. Don't be starting that music on me. All right. So, optimizing our studio space. We've got this incredible studio just on the other side of this door and another door on the other side of this one. But anyway, just on the other side of this wall, basically. It's an incredible studio space, which is where Mark and Justin spend a lot of their time. And trying to more efficiently utilize that space has resulted in an opportunity for us to take a look at using it as the spot where interviews with the media would be conducted, as opposed to current state, which is like we just find an office that has the least amount of papers on the desk, plop everyone in front of the desk and have that interview there. So just working on branding in a variety of ways, including in our studio. And then also the Schooled podcast is recorded in that studio as well. And then over the last year or so, we've worked on developing a brand style guide. So just basically focusing on alignment, typography, color palettes, best usage when it comes to these types of features in terms of how we're visually telling our story and creating alignment from building to building as well. And then we'll launch that in tandem with the start of a 3-year communications campaign that we're designing currently and will launch at the beginning of the coming school year. And then the website is certainly something that we have all experienced frustration with to various degrees. I call it the ultimate digital junk drawer. And we are working right now as we speak to start to tackle that digital junk drawer. So it was one of those things that in my first year I imagined would be done that first year. Let's just get after that. Seemed like an easy thing. It's not so easy, not so cheap. And so over the first year and a half, it was really a matter of trying to figure out when we would have the capacity and the bandwidth, both in the communications and in the technology departments, to really tackle this big rock. And then second, how was it going to be paid? How is it going to be paid for? And so at the end of last year in the spring, we made the decision as an administrative team to set aside about $80,000 to ensure that our website would get rehauled. And so we're excited to be able to be more strategically along that path. And then moving ahead, really it's a matter of just stabilizing some of those things that you see on the left-hand column and then optimizing the others. And really I'd like to get to a point where we're not creating new material, new content, new platforms being utilized and introduced all the time. Using what we've got, stabilizing it, and then moving forward into optimization. Questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to thank you and your staff for all the work. We do have our brand out there and a lot of positive stories, and I think that's a plus for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. And I am so thankful that you're going to be looking at the website.
Yes.
But really, I've heard a lot of positive things that, our brand is out there. People know who we are. So I thank you and your team for all your hard work, because it is paying off.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I was really excited the first year that we launched our stories, somewhere around October, November. David Brandon made it a point to stop me in the hall and told me that he'd been at a regional conference and people who didn't know where Cedar Rapids was knew our stories. They were, they were paying attention. Ryan Reedstrom claims that our stories is one of the reasons he came to us when he saw our stories and the things that we were doing. Is Ryan here? No? Okay. So, yeah, thank you.
I have quite a few questions. So I think I heard this correctly. So you're writing for traditional and digital communications.
And live events.
Live events. Mm-hmm. You're supporting the superintendent's office and other departments at ELSC. You're doing public relations and marketing. How many writers do you have?
I am the only writer on the team.
You're the only writer.
At the same time, my teammates are really good about starting drafts for me. So it's very much a team effort where they might start a draft for me just to get the ball rolling, and I'm always incredibly appreciative of that. And then I tackle it with my skill set.
And additionally, so like for the brand and style guide, and we have our branding, we have our colors, we have our logo, that's kind of all tying together, and it looks fantastic. Who's doing graphic?
We have a graphic designer in the printing and graphics office, and Mary King is the person who has been doing some of our graphics, and she's retiring. And we've got somebody who is filling her position here starting, I think, December 2nd. And the volume in terms of the graphics that we have needed over the course of the last couple of years with the strategic plan and the implementation of all of these things that are underway with the strategic plan, everything from the action items that human resources is constantly in the middle of, Future Ready Academy, I mean, really just a number of things, everything from profile of a graduate, human resources, digital literacy. There's such a volume of material that needs to be designed that we utilize Mary, and then we also look to Grantwood AEA. That's been an incredible resource for us. And then there have been times where as a team, we've hired independent contractors as well.
Okay. And you're also the volunteer coordinator, director?
Yeah, so the director of the volunteer program.
I'm not being a jerk, but why do you have that? I mean, it seems like a super HR thing, so I'm trying to figure out why that's it.
It was a format. It's been within that office for a long time. But I think what you're highlighting is that it's been out of the communications office for quite some time. And so prior to Akwi's onboarding, and Pat Simonik, who supports Akwi's office, has been connected to that program as well for a long time. But I think also what you're highlighting is systemically, when we do such a heavy lift of all the heavy work around our strategic plan, it has this ripple effect that compounds, and then what we start to identify are different needs for our organization. And so I anticipate we'll continue to have different needs for our organization, whether that be through operations or personnel.
Okay. And one last thing. So for website, how many people are working on the website redesign?
Okay, I didn't get into the details of that. Currently, Jeff Lucas and I, I'm not quite sure what his title is in technology. So Jeff Lucas and I have been meeting to sort of come to an understanding together of what he, from the tech side, may envision us moving towards over the course of the next, 1 to 5 years when it comes to our website, and what I would need on the communication side. So he and I have been meeting just behind the scenes to sort of explore what our options may be and understand together what current state is, and then work together to determine what we want future state to be, ideal future state.
So you're looking at shared branding and strategic messaging is consistent throughout. Okay.
Yep. And so he and we actually just met again today and have talked about how closely we are to creating an RFP and making that RFP public, but wanting to be intentional about ensuring that he and I are both on the same page about exactly what we desire for our digital content to look like, how we want our digital content to be managed, and making sure that we're clear on that before we make this really important decision and investment in the website.
I do have just one more question. Mm-hmm. So this kind of work and this amount of work and the amount of families that we're trying to reach and the size of community that we live in, what does this look like for comparable districts to our size?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So we're the second largest school district in the state, fourth largest employer in the county, 17,000 students, 2,700 employees. Des Moines, I mean, we're also sort of this unicorn a little bit, because Des Moines, and Noreen, Superintendent Bush, you may have to help me out a little bit. Des Moines is quite far ahead of us in terms of their size and the number of schools they support. And then number 3 behind us would be, I'm not sure what their numbers are like.
I would say that within the UEN districts, there are some UEN districts who have one person doing all of this work, so therefore they're really foregoing a lot of the creative side of things, and really they're just managing. And they outsource a lot of information. So they outsource their website work, they outsource a lot of things. And then Acqui and I have had conversations around from a national lens. There's some really interesting things happening at Atlanta Public Schools. It's funny, I gravitated to Atlanta Public Schools around their strategic plan work, and Acqui gravitated to them around their communications work, and they're doing amazing things in a district that size. Well, their team is like, I don't know,
They've got about
like a
16,
dozen.
Yeah, they've got about 16, but there's the number of schools is insane.
Huge.
So like with Des Moines, they've got a team of 8 on their communications team.
So we have everywhere from 1 to
Yep.
8 would be the largest, and everyone in between within the UEN.
So I guess my question is, as a board, what can we do to better assist you to be successful in these really important, really involved items that communication department is working on?
I think, first of all, being open to the possibility of what it could look like to add bandwidth in the way of human resources, add bandwidth in the way of tools that may that may be an opportunity for us to be more effective and efficient overall as an organization. I think all of us as leaders are really aiming to be more efficient. So how do we become more efficient? How do we become even better aligned? What does that look like when it comes to the tools and resources that we're all utilizing? And how can we further communicate with one another so that if technology's got something that they're working on that really sort of pairs well with communication, or if there are people in technology or in communications who can sort of reimagine what the roles are as we're moving forward over the next 5 years, balancing what had been a very traditional media-focused way of communicating to a more digital-focused way of communicating. Certainly, we're starting to engage technology in different ways. I think what you could do is as a board, is be open to what that may look like in the coming years, and just continue to engage in that conversation, ask the questions that you're asking. But then also, consider that your voice is equally important to everything else that we're communicating on our end, to the community, to staff, to families. Your, now I have to count, and I should just know 8-ish voices, right? 7, 8. Voices are equally important. And being able to understand that our primary focus with so much of this work that's underway is equity and access. Equity and access, and then sustainability and stability. So even when something feels disruptive, even when something on the surface may be disruptive, consider how it may be really a shift in order to create more sustainability and stability in the long run. And then thinking about everything from digital literacy to the work that our elementaries, middles, and high schools are doing with HRS, all leads back to equity and access.
And communications.
And communications.
Any other questions?
Questions and first of all, comments. First of all, Alki, I want to thank you for your demonstrated leadership in working as a team. You've put together 3 one-year plans that we haven't seen before. I mean, it's very specific in what you're looking at, and you're shown some what the progress has been along the way. And the plans have been generated working with your team. It hasn't just been you alone. We appreciate your expertise and so on, but it's also, we have some great staff members too and getting their input. So thank you for the programs and direction and the leadership. But the question that I have, one of the questions I have is that, this is one of the things, the whole communication thing, we just scratch our head when we hear it tonight and some of the public input on transparency and communicating with the public is just, how do you do it? You talked about, 68%, well, we can get a bit with Facebook and so on. What I guess my question would be is, do we have any data, any feedback of how the general public, I'm concerned not just our parents, but also as we start talking about schools and community schools and building the community, are we reaching, are they outside our immediate access? Are they reaching, are we reaching them? And if not, what can we do also to, or what could we add to do that?
Yeah, I would offer that, let's say that number is 68% of adults have access Facebook to gain information, right? I have to imagine that 68% includes both people, both stakeholders who are like families, but as well as people who are not necessarily families or staff in our school district. And so I think when we think about how we're utilizing digital media, I'm certain that we're reaching people beyond our families and staff. Now, I've worked with Mark to try to figure out if there's any possible way we can better understand who is engaging with us on social media, those three primary platforms, and which of those are parents. I don't know that there's necessarily a way to do that. If there is, we haven't figured it out. We haven't discovered it through perhaps enough research, but knowing that Americans in certain age groups utilize Instagram for information, they utilize Facebook for information, they utilize Twitter for information. I'm certain that those are people beyond our current families. And at the same time, you receive updates at 3 p.m. from Cision in your inbox every day. And Cision is a tool that we chose to invest in last year to better track our digital content engagement. So everything from if somebody utilizes kcrg.com to access a story about the school district, it tracks that. And so what's interesting to me is that not only are people utilizing social media platforms directly, our platforms, to engage with information about us, they're utilizing KCRG's Facebook page to be the first step into KCRG's website, right? So they're going to KCRG's Facebook page to capture an article that then links them to the website, for instance. So I feel like I may not have answered your question after all of that.
Well, it was a difficult question, and I guess I just kind of threw it out because, again, just showing a concern that I have, and I'm sure other board members about the other. Can I just add a
little bit more?
Sure.
So the communication it's a huge beast. We've talked actually about just a small portion of it. I didn't even mention, in terms of equity and access, our families for whom English is not their first language, right? So there is so much work that still needs to be done if we truly want to reach all of our families, right? So on the one hand, you asked a question about our community members who aren't families, but on the other hand, there is this entire population of our families that we still need to address as well. So, there are so many ways of thinking about it. How are we engaging with our families, regardless of the language they speak, regardless of whether or not they're literate in the language they speak? So how are we engaging them with digital, print, live? Which of those three is going to be, we talk about differentiation. Not every family wants to or tends to engage with information in the same way. And so that's certainly something that we're constantly thinking about. Is it something that we have the bandwidth to address today? It isn't. But it's also something that we're constantly communicating with one another about. How do we engage with our families who may not have internet access at home, who may not, maybe they speak a language, maybe their primary language is a language other than English, but also they're not necessarily literate in that language. So there's so many complexities. I would just offer, even when we're talking about something like engaging community members through our website, right? We know that that's something we need to address. That's one small piece of that pie.
I think that the nut that you've cracked here too, and what Akwi's highlighted, is that interdependence of the heavy lifts that we've had with the digital literacy department, which is part of the technology department, which is part of the communications department, which then connects to every other department, and it becomes this ripple effect. And so the more diverse that our community becomes, and the more intentionality we have around the ways in which we're communicating, the better design that we have. But it does become one rock gets lifted, and then it's like, whoa, what's under that rock? Ooh, now the rock gets lifted. And so we are discovering here where we wanted to be perhaps a year ago. We're just finding more efficiencies, but it might take us a little longer to get there. The website being a prime example, what you've already highlighted, is just making sure that we're connecting those interdependencies to better serve our community and our families.
You hit on something with, and Aqua, you also mentioned, as within our internal, as we move to a one-on-one, now with our high schools, next year with the middle school, and eventually it may go down a little bit lower. And with that, we're also providing hotspots or internet accessibility. Something to think about is when they open up that computer, what do they see? In other words, would it link maybe directly to our homepage? Would it directly to a question, or, you know, anyway, you could have parents and you could have others that would, we're opening a door to them. The other is because of some of my work with IASB and so on, frequently visiting Des Moines and having some overnight stays and channel surfing. Des Moines, and I'm
They've got a team of 8 directly
yeah,
at home.
I know. But just to throw out, they have a video program that highlights a program to it, and it's coming through public access. I have no idea, you know, how well it is, but I do find it interesting to be able to get some background to it. So again, you talk about limited, you know, with our own wavelength, whatever, you know.
Bandwidth,
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can, you know, if we had some public access through MediaCom, whatever, you know, those, to be able to do it without overloading our own bandwidth.
And I know that we had a cable channel at one point, our school district did, and I'm not quite sure how long ago that was. And it's something that we could certainly take a look at again, perhaps after we get the website redesigned. But I would say that I'm really excited about the podcast, and the podcast being one way that that's incredibly accessible to a lot of people. I have to imagine in a way at least equal to that of a cable channel. Different, but at least equal to that of a cable channel. And so just thinking again, what are the tools, the incredible tools available to us in 2019 that we could utilize in a way that would reach the most people most frequently and most consistently?
Well, again, thank you so much. I hope I didn't sound too critical. I really appreciate it. This is a very important part of our work. I've always said we've got to get the good message out. Yeah. There's this underlying, I think, misconception that public schools are failing, and that's not the case. Yeah. We're doing a great job, and we need to get that message out. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I didn't feel anything was critical, and if it, if it ever is, it's constructive criticism. So I didn't, yeah, I appreciate
So,
your comments.
Akwi, do we do any mailings at all? I think it's, because I know that was a concern at the forums I was present at, that some of the students said their parents, they don't access any of the social media. But then I believe it's hard to really figure out who is not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think if we can, that's something we should look at too, because there are some that are older that they won't even go to a computer. And how do we get the information out? That's just something to think about.
And that's varied over the years. At our buildings, a lot of our buildings do still send information out through print, but even that has transitioned at times, whether it's, the green folder. Everybody at the elementary level had a green folder that went home in the backpack, and every day as a parent, I'm pulling out the green folder and papers are flying everywhere,
Right.
And I was always appreciative to have that information. But then, some of our schools have transitioned from that information going home in print form to digital form. For some schools, that may be better. So, thinking again, going back to our mission, if we acknowledge that one pathway is not necessarily the right pathway for all students, then how are we thinking about something like communication in our buildings? One mode of communication for Hoover may look very different in terms of how they're communicating to their families or even portions of their families than, going to a high school, any high school, pick the high school, but just by virtue of it being a high school versus an elementary school changes things. So I would say that we have historically used print materials pretty frequently, primarily coming from the building level. Even coming from the district level, there are times when we've been intentional about sending print materials home. Something significant like the bus transportation transition going, into the school year, Infinite Campus. I mean, we do try to be thoughtful and intentional about when we're using print materials. Could we utilize them differently in the future? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
President Hummels, I just we used an acronym and for new board members and even the general public, the UEN. UEN is the Urban Educational Network, which is the 8 largest school districts in the state. And then originally that's what it was. And then a few years ago, they've added associate members with some of the smaller schools. And so we will be meeting have a UEN meeting in Des Moines as part of the upcoming conference. And UEN also hires a lobbyist to lobby for specific issues that we as the larger districts find unique and special for. So just that point of information.
And that UEN meeting on Wednesday at 1:30 is an open meeting, so.
Well, right, and then there's the dinner meeting on Wednesday evening.
I want to stay focused on the presentation here.
Sure.
Are there any other questions regarding the presentation? Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Akwi.
thank you all.
Excellent job. We look forward to another update.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is, I want to remind folks we have our evaluations and also a copy of your school calendar. And with nothing else on our agenda, the meeting is adjourned. And everyone have a good evening.